Hi guys, it's me George, and today I wanted to do a book review. And not only did I want to do a book review, I actually wanted to give my thoughts on this said book. Now, admittedly, this is a book that I have never ever fully read through. I've took part in spells from it, some spells, I've took part in even a ritual from it, but I've never ever read this the full way through. And that book is Aradia, or The Gospel of the Witches by Charles Godfrey Leland. Also known, the manuscript was known as the Vangelo. Now, this is a very controversial book because this book basically has a lot of people like it's bogus, it's made up, and there are a lot of academics that are like, I don't buy this. Now, if anybody hasn't read the Aradia, effectively, Charles Godfrey Leland, who was an American folklorist, claimed that it was given to him, the manuscript was given to him by a woman named Magdalena. And Magdalena effectively was a witch and basically was like, this here is the Gospel of the Witches, which was a secret underground cult of witchcraft that revered Diana as the creatrix of the world, but also the mother of witches, and her lover, also her brother Lucifer, and who had both had a daughter called Aradia. So I'm going to give a review on it, but I'm also going to give my kind of insights and my thoughts about this book, as of whether or not this is legit. Now, first and foremost, I actually read this book going to Italy on the plane, which I just thought it would be very, very novel. I thought it would be very, very cute. But yeah, I was like, I'm going to give this book a read. And funnily enough, the preface, there was a comment in it whilst I'm on the plane reading this that said, "Heaven knows what it will be like when flying machines appear." And I thought that was pretty cool. This book that was published in 1899, talking about flying whilst I'm on a plane reading about this person from 1899 writing about flying, just blew my fucking mind. Really did blow my mind because stuff like that I find really cool. But this book had a massive effect on not just Wicca, actually, traditional craft, but in, very obvious terms, part of the gospel, as a sign that you are truly free, you shall be naked in your rights, both men and women also, and this shall be last until the last of your oppressors shall be dead. So that is in the Charge of the Goddess, written by Doreen Valiente, and also Skycladness. There's a lot of stuff in here that reeks of Solomonic magic to me, especially things like the conjuration of the salt. I'm like, that is the greater key of Solomon. And there are also things in here that reek of Solomonic magic, as in the lesser key of Solomon. There are things here like that actually constrain entities. And a lot of people think, oh yeah, it had a massive effect on Wicca. No, not just Wicca. There is a conjuration here of Cain, and I'm going to read it out. "I conjure thee, O Cain, as thou canst near, have rest or peace until thou shalt be freed from the sun where thou art prisoned, and must go beating thy hands and running fast. Meanwhile, I pray thee, let me know my destiny, and if 'tis evil, change its course for me. If thou wilt grant this grace, I'll see it clear, in the water, in the splendour of the sun. And thou, O Cain, shalt tell by word of mouth, whatever this my destiny is to be. And unless thou grantest this, mayst thou never know peace or bliss." There's a lot of conjurations like this that are quite constraining. Personally, that's not my bag of tits at all. That is not my bag of tits. That is not my thing. I'm not into that at all. And so, I think there's very much an influence there of the lesser key of Solomon, but also the greater key of Solomon. So Solomonic magic definitely has a stronghold and an influence on this text. I also think that when having a look at whether or not something's legitimate, having a look at the environment. So in this book, it basically says that you'll receive a sign from Diana, and basically it could be the hiss of a snake, the croak of a frog, or the light from a firefly. And so, of course, I was like, right, this is Tuscany. Are there fireflies in Tuscany? Yes, there's fireflies in Tuscany. Are there frogs? Yes, are there snakes? Yes, there's snakes in Tuscany. So that was kind of cool. And I was like, okay, so this exists. But where did Charles Godfrey Leland live? Tuscany. He emigrated to Tuscany. He was an American, but he emigrated to Tuscany. At that point, I was like, makes it a lot more harder. So the next thing that had me like, okay, was the talk of the Madonna as a representation of Diana. Because there is no way, shape and form that an underground secret pagan cult could go years and years and years, hundreds and hundreds of years underground and not be noticed without the influence of Christianity. There is no way. Italy is such a Catholic country. Italy has had one Reformation, but the Catholic Church basically oppressed it. I think it was around the 1500s. So much has happened in Italy, but it is such a Catholic country. There is no way that Catholicism wouldn't have a hold on that, or wouldn't have some form of influence on that. That was a wee bit like, okay. However, having mentioned this, the author does mention, does hold some comparison very, very briefly to voodoo in the Americas. And of course, everybody knows that the religion of voodoo, the syncretism that took part in regards to their native beliefs and in regards to Christianity and the syncretism with that, the mix of that. So, yeah. And if someone's a folklorist, that's the harder part. If someone's a folklorist and they know quite a lot about folklore, then it's very easily changed. It's very easily changed, especially if they have knowledge of folklore. The next one is looking at certain charms. There is a charm there for a hagstone. So I have a friend, a very, very good friend. If you're watching this, mwah, ciao bella, I love you. And I asked her, she's not from Tuscany, but she's from Capodimonte, which is a gorgeous place. She stays in England now. She stays down south, and I fucking miss her loads, and I love her to bits. But I asked her a couple of questions in regards to the hagstone, the use of the hagstone, and if it actually has a place in Italian magic. To her knowledge, it doesn't. But she mentioned she was always more into Celtic kind of magic and Celtic kind of belief systems rather than Italian belief systems. But to her knowledge, it doesn't really, it's more of a British thing, an Irish thing, and plays parts in other parts of Europe, but not necessarily Italy. I've had a look around, but I've got AI answers, so I don't really know. If anyone knows more about it, let me know in the comments. So there's that. There are things I really enjoyed. There was a stone. If you find a red stone in this book, then you can conjure on a red goblin, and that's basically your familiar spirit, and you keep this stone in your pocket, and that's the house for the familiar spirit. I love that. I lived for that. I absolutely loved that. But there were things in it that it didn't include. It didn't include things like Il Malocchio, the evil eye. It included nothing of that. And that is such a massive part of Italian folk magic and Italian folklore that it didn't include that. It didn't include workings of olive oil. It didn't include workings of things like corno, which is like a horn charm that someone gifts you. There's a lot of things in this book that it just did not mention. The cosmology as well felt very like, oh yeah, then this happened and that was it. And I'm like, there kind of has to be more to this. So yes, in terms of its legitimacy, I don't think this manuscript is legitimate at all. Perhaps it is a mix. Perhaps someone did give him this manuscript. Just because someone gave him this manuscript doesn't mean that it's actually real. You know, just because maybe Magdalena did exist doesn't mean it's actually real. So maybe someone did give him this manuscript, you know, maybe someone did. But I don't think that the legitimacy, I don't believe it. And I would love to believe it. Like, I would love to believe that, you know, for hundreds and hundreds of years, there was this secret witch cult that were like, fuck our oppressors, you know, and we're going to fight back with the power of the moon and Diana, and, you know, we're going to celebrate and be wild and be poisoners. And I love all that. I can get behind that. Do you know what I mean? I love the aspect of Diana and Lucifer, but again, to my knowledge, outside of this book, there's no connections between Diana and Lucifer explicitly. Some people do see similarities between Apollo and Lucifer. Perhaps it's that. Perhaps it is that, because Apollo was Diana's twin, you know? Maybe it is that. Maybe it is that. But it's very, very interesting nevertheless. And I really enjoyed it flying to Italy and then going to Italy and kind of thinking about the book as well. So I really, really enjoyed it. But from a folkloric perspective, there were a lot of things that didn't add up. There were a lot of things that weren't included in the text as well. That was very strange to me. So yeah, I'm going to say that I actually enjoyed reading it. I think it was a good read. I thought it was great fun. But I do think that it's not legitimate. However, I can see the massive influence that it's had on traditional witchcraft and Wicca. An incredible influence. And just because this is a thing, I think sometimes that we need to delineate from. Yes, truth is important, don't get me wrong. Like, I'm an author, I've written books on historical magic. Truth is very, very important. But as practitioners, so then is poetic truth. You know, there is truth, and then there is poetic truth. And I think that poetic truth includes gnosis, it includes wisdom, it includes stories that may not necessarily be true. Look at folklore, people turning into seals and, you know, stealing Selkie's skin in order to attain that spirit, attain that fairy. I don't believe that someone physically took a woman's skin, but I believe the poetic truth of that lore, of that story, the poetic truth that it carries for being able to work with the Fae, being able to work with a she. Likewise with this, you know, I don't believe that this book is legit. I don't. But it must work. Like, it must work to some degree, because if that's had such an influence on Wicca, and not just Wicca, like our side of the camp too, guys, like traditional graft, if you read it, certain branches of traditional graft, you'll read this and you'll be like, holy shit, I know where that's from, you know, and it's cool, it's awesome. And if it has an effect on that and it works and it is powerful, then it's a poetic truth. And there is nothing wrong with that. I don't think just because something is made up, it means that it's crap, that we need to throw the baby out with the bathwater. No, I don't believe that at all. I believe that things hold power. And I believe that this is a mix of real folklore and some fabricated things. I think it's a mix. I wish I could turn around and say it was real. I would love that. I would love that if I could be like, yeah, this is real, and like fully believe that and know. But it's not my first time on the rodeo, and I've spent a lot of time researching historic folk magic, and even asked, you know, Italian friends. And, you know, one of the things that my friend had said to me is that actually, you know, there's no pagan folk magic. Sorry, there is definitely Catholic folk magic. There's no really pagan folk magic in Italy. It's all Catholic. It's all things like, you know, working with saints. It's all based on the Malocchio, the evil eye. You have things like Benedicaria, you know, it's all based, if people are practicing magic in Italy in a traditional sense, it's Catholic, it's not pagan. You know, it's not pagan at all. They're all practicing it under a Catholic guise. So yes, I don't believe this, but I believe in the poetic truth of this, and I believe in the power that it has held, and does hold over modern witchcraft traditions. And I do think anybody in either a modern witchcraft tradition, whether or not it's Wicca or branches of traditional craft, should read this book, because I do think it's also very pretty, and there are some certain charms that I'm taking from it. Not about the constraining, but I love the rest of it. So yeah, I hope this book review helps. I hope you enjoyed it. And yeah, over and out. Arrivederci.